How's it going, everybody? This is Dailies to Downloads. My name is Chad. With me is Erik. This is a webcast, a podcast about movies. This week, we're just going to go over some of the updates and recent headlines with regard to movie watching during the pandemic and how that has affected studios and theater chains. There has been a lot of recent headlines. And we'll start off with one of the recent developments in some of the major cities across the US, and one would think that this will spread, is that they are starting to ask for proof of vaccination at the theaters. And the theater owners are very worried about this, and understandably so, because this will drive ticket sales down even more than they were before, which is not great already, as we've discussed in the past. We have New Orleans, and coming up is San Francisco, and then I think September 13th, New York
they started implementing it today, but I think there are these weird tiers of in 2 weeks is another tier, but as of today, they did start doing that here in New York.
Yeah, and I guess it's a little bit different if you have been vaccinated, and with regard to at least wearing a mask and stuff. And then there's the whole mask mandate thing, which obviously is a hot button topic all across the U.S., regardless of movie theaters. But so, Erik, what do you think about the whole proof of vaccination thing? Do you think that this is just one more obstacle that theaters will have to face? Do you think that they should be worried? What do you think?
Well, it might be an obstacle, but at the same time, I think I see it perhaps a little bit from the other side, where people may be less comfortable about going to a theater due to being in a very I don't know, what would you say, non-vaccinated area,
Right.
if you will. Almost the reverse. I mean, I guess I could see both sides. One, obviously, if you're mandating vaccination, then you're turning people away,
Right.
literally. But then I do see the opposite, where someone might feel a little bit more comfortable about finally going to a movie again or something, if something like this was put into place.
Right.
I don't think either is going to greatly help right now in terms of financial stuff, unimportant stuff like movie grosses and things like that. But maybe as this becomes somewhat of the norm, I guess it's also tough because the major movie chains, I guess, are just have to do what the state mandate is. So I don't think it's gonna be like AMC or Regal saying across the board company policy. It seems to be based on what the state is making them do.
Right.
And so that that kind of thing will always make it very, very scattered. And then
some states are more liberal than others, or more concerned about this than others, as we all know and have seen on the news.
And people may travel. People don't necessarily stay within state lines. Like there are these other kinds of things where it's like, okay, it maybe seems like it's proactive to a degree, but I'm not sure if it's going to make such a huge dent either way. But maybe just pessimistic.
Well, I do think that it will, if anything, it will hurt the movie ticket sales even more than they already are. But one thing I think, and this is just in general, if you ask me, I think that people should start getting used to carrying their vaccination card with them on a regular basis if they don't already.
I download an app for New York State, so
and a lot of people have apps. Because let's face it, movie theaters are not going to be the only ones that want to see proof of vaccine. It might be Broadway or concert venues or whatever. So I think that is something that people should start getting used to doing. And on top of that, I think that theaters, and this goes back to what we talked about in the past, with theaters adapting to change and being proactive and trying to not be so far behind the ball. If it were me in the meetings, I would simply say we need to get ahead of this. We need to adapt to these changes, and this is going to be a way of life for a while. So let's hit the ground running, have a system in place. Here's what we're going to do with people bringing in their vaccination cards. Here's how we're going to keep the line moving. Here will be the directions. Here, whatever.
Yeah,
But
if anything, it shows being more lackadaisical has prolonged this. And when is there an end in sight? It seems like, yeah, we got to get a little bit more stricter if this is going to ever be behind us.
and as my mom's a nurse, and she told me way back when the pandemic was in its peak that one of the worst places to go is a movie theater.
Sure.
Like, on the scale of likelihood of catching COVID, the movie theater is very high on the list because it's a contained space. So it's always going to be an issue. And in New Orleans, it's a big issue as far as people that are unvaccinated, because half of the population in the article that I read are not vaccinated. So it's and these cities are a big part of the ticket sales. So it's going to be something that we have to face going forward. So theaters should be worried. I really think I really think they should be taking a more proactive approach to everything. I really do. I think they should try to adapt to all this in a better way than they have, instead of a wait and see approach, or a wait and it'll go away approach.
Yeah, because look how quickly the news changes too. With, I think it was just last summer or last fall when like the AMC CEO was announcing like, well, we're not going to request mandate mask wearing, you know. And then there was a huge public outcry against that. And they're like,
Right.
oh, okay, you've spoken. We are going to do, because it was all thinking of, if you ask them to wear a mask, is that turning away business? Well, it's like, guys, they're going to have to be bigger fish to fry, like,
Right.
it's turning away business. Yes. But you know what also turns away business? Dead customers. Like, eventually
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
a certain point, like, we can keep putting our one foot in the water, taking it out, putting it back in, blah, blah, blah. But we're just prolonging this stretch throughout, for numerous reasons. But
Right. Right. And so, as a result of the kind of hills and valleys that theaters are facing right now, the treacherous territory that those chains are facing ahead, what we're seeing then is streaming deals being worked out. And boy, in the last month or so, like, there has been a lot going on with streaming deals. I feel like, to a degree, it's like the Wild West when it comes to like what studios have what windows. So one of the things that made me want to choose this topic is the fact that AMC and Warner Brothers struck a deal to have a 45-day window. Now, this news is a couple weeks old, but I mention it because, and I think one of our former colleagues, Jeremy Thomas, was talking about how this is, it's I guess a step in a good direction, but at the same time, it's like trying to put the genie back into the bottle. Because the theaters want there to be a wider window. It used to be, just for point of comparison, it used to be from 75 to 90 days, the window from theaters to digital or to DVD. So now that's being shortened to 45 in the case of just those two, AMC and Warner Brothers. It's different everywhere else. But it's a big deal. And studios might say, well, this is something, it's a compromise, but Warner Brothers is still giving HBO Max a whole slew of exclusive movies going forward. So streaming is just kind of something that's here to stay. It's something that you have to deal with. And before I move on, so I'm sure you heard about that
Yeah.
deal, right?
I mean, I guess in the very bare sense, like, I'm glad that at least preserves some of the theater exclusivity.
Right.
But there is a thing where it's like, okay, doing it with one specific theater chain feels a little unethical or whatever.
Right.
To me, I think that's weird. Because, like, when we get the Robert Pattinson Batman movie next year, it's okay, like, you got to go to an AMC to see it for the first 45 days.
Right.
And now, due to the pandemic and otherwise, I feel like now even I'm conditioned, when I hear about a new movie coming out, to first think, oh, is it also available to stream? Like, that's, I've caught up, I guess, with that as well, because we've kind of had to, and because more often than not, it is, no matter what it is, So now it's actually more what was the one last that a Free Guy, the Ryan Reynolds movie? That's like they made an emphasis to say like only in theaters. You
And
know,
I was talking to somebody today about this, and I was like, of all movies that you're going to put your foot down about, Free Guy starring Ryan Reynolds is the movie. It's like, darn it, you got to come into theaters to see this one. You can't see it any other way. Really? Like that's the one we're going to base all of our hopes on. Oh, this will make
luckily
people.
it seems to have done okay from what
I'm
I.
sure it has because that's the only way people can see it.
Thank God. If it would have bombed, then it would say, see, people don't want to, and it's skewed somewhat younger, obviously. So
Right. Yeah.
I'm assuming those kids feel like I'm healthy. I'll see Free Guy. I don't know. I don't hang out with young kids, but so yeah. So I don't mind the exclusivity itself. I just think that the way it's done between one theater chain, one monopoly and another, does make it dicey going forward. Because Regal was probably trying to do that right now with Paramount or
The
what have
movies
you.
though they're choosing to release only in theaters to me are so odd. Like, Spiral was one that was only available in theaters there for a while, and I thought that was a weird one, to like make people go to the theaters for, but even though you did. It's just, but so one of the things that this has happened because of all this is like I feel like some studios are seeing how the movie performs, and if it doesn't perform in theaters the way they want it to, they fast track it to digital instead of the 45. Now I don't know what windows every studio and theater chain have, but like for example, The Green Knight, initially that was, I saw a article where that was going to be streaming online for one day it was going to be streaming online, and I thought I should talk to Erik about that. That
Yeah.
sounds like an interesting idea.
That
What if,
A24 screening room. They did
right,
it with Zola and
right.
Minari. They did it once, and yeah.
And I was like, what if that was something that happened going forward? Like, if you want to stream it online, you only have one day to do it. Like, that might be an interesting thing, but it appears they didn't stick to that because tomorrow it's just coming out digitally. Like,
Yeah.
so
That is something where, if anyone's attended any virtual film festivals, where that has become a normal practice, where it's like it's only available on this day and within this like 4 hour block of time.
right, you've told me about
So,
that before, yeah.
yeah, so that I guess makes it a little bit more exclusive, because as you know, when we have movies that you can watch at home, you're going to put it off for as long as you can usually, right?
Right.
So if I know I have to watch it within this 4 hour window, um, that makes it a little bit more special. That could have been cool, but I guess yeah, A24 decided to open up the floodgates the next day and just have it open everywhere.
Yeah, because I had considered seeing it, and then I was just like, well, now I can wait. And I think
Now it's available, and you're like, I'll get to it in 2029 probably.
right, and but you see, that's the thing. Then what we've talked about before is, like Fast and the Furious 9. I had thought about going to see that in theaters, and then I turned around and it's already available to rent on digital. And then you have to ask yourself. So initially, you're asking yourself, should I see it in theaters? And then the window comes and goes, and now it's available to rent for $20 on digital platforms. And then you have to ask yourself, should I just wait until the rental price goes down? So there's now, like, instead of waiting for theaters or DVD, there's like multiple different
Yeah,
dates
there's
that
like
that you can consider.
premium VOD or SVOD or whatever it is. Yeah, I think that is always the main benefit. Always comes up that like, oh, if you have a family, it's cheaper to watch it at home and just pay that $20 or $30 for the Disney All Access or whatever it's called. So outside of that, if I'm watching it alone, yes, if I'm gonna still wait till it goes to the $4.99, $5.99. Back in the old days, we called it waiting for the red box, kids. But is that still around, Redbox?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It is. Okay.
There's not many in my area. I never really used it that much, if to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I was kind of reliant on Netflix when they mailing discs to my house.
It was just a 3 a.m. gas station just walk by a red box and just
Yeah.
look at the titles. An old American pastime.
Like it was far enough away, the red boxes, where I was just like, oh, I don't want to get this and have to return it tomorrow, but then I'm going to get charged another day.
Yeah. Exactly.
One of the other parts of the whole theaters and streaming issue has been the stars' salary and what they're getting paid. And obviously, the Scarlett Johansson Disney situation has continued to spiral, I guess. No pun intended, Chris Rock. But obviously, that continues to escalate, I guess is a better way to say it. So I guess, I know, obviously, I'm not an expert on movie contracts, but I would imagine that in addition to what they get paid, standard salary, they have certain agreements as to pieces of the movie in some cases, depending on the star, of course.
Yeah. And she, I think, also had like an executive producer credit. I think that's also in her favor, that she's also
Right.
playing that title on top of it is a part of that being screwed.
I mean, I guess it's all about the wording in this case. And Disney, which is, I don't know, uncharacteristic, has been pretty blunt and aggressive with how they've responded to her, saying that there's no merit to any of this, and then throwing out to the news establishments what her salary was, which was $20 million, if I remember correctly.
Who can survive on that? You know what I mean? Who can survive?
What's that?
Who can survive on that? She just had a kid this week. I mean, this kid needs to eat. We're
Right.
just gonna give him $20 million? Come on.
Right. Yeah. And, congrats to her for the baby. But obviously she's, in addition to being a mom now, she's also dealing with this lawsuit. So, I mean, it's hard for me to really give an opinion without knowing what the wording is. I mean, if it's based on movie ticket sales and a pandemic affects that, then my reaction to her lawsuit is tough shit. But if if certain amounts are promised to her, that's different. But if it's just a percentage of the ticket sales and there are no ticket sales, like, then what can you do?
Yeah. I mean, for some, I don't know about this with Disney, but with HBO Max, when Warner decided that they were going to release their entire 2021 slate on HBO Max, they did pay a lot of the top talent for those films. Like, I think Patty Jenkins got $10 million, and so did Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman going to HBO Max.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they at least got paid. Will Smith got paid for King Richard. Like, James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, like they got paid like a couple extra $1 million due to
on top of what they already got.
Yeah, due to the decision to pivot to do streaming at the same time. So in that sense, there is precedent for Scarlett Johansson to have beef.
And that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why they couldn't then just say with the Disney whatever it's called, Premiere
Disney Premiere Access.
Yeah, why not give a cutback percentage of that?
You would think then, if that was, you would think that would be.
They made such a big announcement, like you don't need to release your numbers, which is also a little Wild West. But Disney was like very open about $60 million in streaming sales for Black Widow opening weekend. Right. And so if that's real, those are real receipts, you would think that you could make some, and I assume that probably will be how it plays out, that she'll get a percentage of those sales. And
you would think, and that's why we both now mentioned Wild West, because this is all new terrain.
It's a great film, Wild West. Check it out. It's streaming.
Great show too. Because this is all new terrain. It's almost like, it reminds me of the whole Napster era of music downloads, where now we're in a space where artists are getting paid per stream and all that kind of stuff. And it's more clear cut, but it wasn't always like that. There was a period where it was pretty tumultuous if you were a musician. And I think we're entering that territory to a certain extent with movies and movie streaming and actor salaries too, because certain studios obviously are giving these actors money on top of what they already got based on the streaming deals that they set up. But Disney apparently is not doing that. So
I'm curious if anyone, like, you think for like Jungle Cruise, I'm sure The Rock, oh, come on, they gave him something. They had like for like
I
you're
mean,
telling me he didn't get something
he's
under the
firmly
table.
their guy, so
Yeah,
you would think that they're taking care of him in some way
yeah,
because he's not going to leave.
yeah.
Like,
But the fact that Scarlett Johansson I think was the only one to at least this publicly
right?
is interesting because then because I wonder about what was it last year Mulan which no one remembers because that
Yeah.
Soul, Luca. So so there have been some that even don't do the premiere $30 thing. Some they just put right on Disney Plus, and that is the
Right.
Hamilton. Like I don't know, like I just feel like
Yeah,
it's
there's a
weird
whole
that
list of movies that went straight to streaming
yeah, yeah,
instead of being in theaters, which was, I guess, they planned for a lot of them. And but
yes,
yeah, I
so
mean, the fact that Scarlett Johansson obviously is a female, and so she has her supporters. It's tough to really concretely say whether she's right or wrong without knowing the particulars. But I do think that this is something that will continue to get ironed out as the years go by.
yeah,
Um,
this was probably going to happen eventually with someone, and it was going to be
right?
ugly due to that reason. And
Yeah,
I do think it's maybe people were afraid to speak out because they will look heartless because it's the pandemic. And
and
that is
yeah,
how
like
Disney is kind of framing it.
Disney certainly played that card right away.
Yeah,
They were like, oh, a poor me who's making $20 million, but at the same time, it's a little more complicated than that, and they want to paint her as a villain right away, which is you know somewhat childish, even if Disney's in the right. So,
yeah. But I guess that's it for Black Widow, right? The character, like I think she's.
well, yeah, I mean,
If it wasn't before, it definitely is now.
yeah. Spoiler alert: she did die in the
That didn't stop her though from making another movie.
in Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
And now this was like her one-off movie. So yeah, I mean, I've heard rumors that some of the characters in Black Widow could potentially return down the road. But to date, sorry, I have not seen it because it is still Disney Premiere or Access or
I won't see it until this legal dispute is put to rest.
right. We are free Scarlet. That's
I
what
am
we
a
call
Court of
it.
Appeals viewer.
Free Scarlet. I would hold up my sign, but I don't have one.
Exactly. I saw today that Anthony Mackie's signed to be the lead in the next Captain America movie, and you
Yeah.
got to guarantee that they are ironing out those streaming specifics in the contract.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's going to be a big deal going forward when these stars are signing on to movies or sequels or whatever. They're going to want to know, what do I get if the number of theaters showing my movie goes down, if the ticket sales end up being a moot point. And you can't blame them. I mean, this is all new territory, but to me, it's fascinating in many ways. That's why we're movie nerds, I guess. And on top of all this, so certain studios are simply dealing with the problem by skipping theaters altogether. Hotel Transylvania 4, which I know is a movie that all the listeners or watchers here are interested in, but it is skipping theaters altogether, and there's like $100 million deal with Amazon to go right to streaming. So yeah, I mean,
it makes sense for me. I do think for kids film, animated films for children specifically, I think streaming is always a better bet.
I agree.
$1 million, that's kind of crazy, but nonetheless, everyone excited for Paw Patrol the movie this Friday. Just see it on Paramount Plus. If you haven't gotten that, I don't think anyone's gotten Paramount Plus, but I'm sure they have free trials. There are free trials. I'm sure. Just see Paw Patrol.
There was a really good free trial at one point, but yeah, Paramount Plus is one of the worst in my opinion.
I don't feel like they have an anchor right now for any. I know that they're gonna do maybe a 30-day thing. Their first like big one I feel like is Top Gun, the Top Gun sequel.
Right.
And they have like a certain thing in place where like
they had like a free trial. Like normally their free trial is just like 7 days or whatever it is. But they did have a longer free trial when around the time that Quiet Place 2 was hitting their service. But that didn't really much matter anyway because the Blu-ray came out and now the codes are all out there and you can stream it or buy it on, so it's they, like you said, they don't have an anchor. They need to have something else that draws people in to want to pay $9.99 a month for their service. So
and just thinking of someone as a side note, because $100 million seems insane. Like I also think that in the case of another film that sold for $25 million at Sundance called Coda,
Yeah.
Child of Deaf Adults, CODA, was bought for 25 million from Apple, which was the biggest we always say every year someone makes the biggest sale ever, right? And so it was obviously it was a very, very big deal. It won all the top prizes at Sundance, but then it's like, I wonder if these companies are spending that kind of money because they can, and because it like gives them some clout, because then I always think the rollout distribution of it is always botched.
Yeah.
It's in a few theaters as well, but I just feel like, again, like we always say, after 48 hours, 72 hours, it just feels like a missed opportunity.
That's the part of this that the studios specifically really need to look into, is the whole, how can we extend the interest people have in our new releases? Because as we've talked about, and you just said, right now it's very short. It is a very like short-term interest period. It's like, okay, this was new this weekend. On Monday, I'm not going to care about it in any way.
Yeah. And so I think some of these companies that have so much money are just doing it because they want to seem like a premiere. When Netflix a couple of years ago wanted to be seen as like a very filmmaker focused studio,
Right.
they put a lot of money behind that and stuff. And I think the Apples and Amazons of the world are behind in that regard. And so, but they have so much dumb money to throw around.
Right.
That, but then they don't know what to do with it. So it's like we always say, good luck finding a movie on Amazon Prime. Like, sure, they'll give you $100 million for it, but good luck finding it on there. Like, it's unfortunate. Even.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to promote the hell out of Hotel Transylvania 4 when the weekend it opens, but
everyone's talking about on HBO, the White Lotus.
Oh yeah,
that was a big thing on Saturday and Sunday. Now, by the time you guys hear this episode, probably won't even remember it.
My wife has already mentioned wanting to watch that, and there's right now, whether it's movies or shows, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier too. There is an oversaturation of content, and it's out of control. It really, really is. Like, no one has the amount of time in their life to watch all the stuff that's out right now. Like, it really is. It becomes a point where it's like, well, should I watch these indie movies or should I watch this new release? Or what about these shows? And like, I'm just not going to watch anything.
Exactly. And after all that dilemma and existential crisis, you come to the conclusion, well, you know what? Screw it. I've been thinking about it for 3 hours. It's midnight now. It's time to go to bed.
Right. And in my case, it's like, well, I know wrestling's on somewhere. Click.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny that the onslaught of it. And also another one. Check. Funny Annette, which is the new film from Leos Carax, the guy that made Holy Motors, the French filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
It's a musical from the Sparks, the brothers. With Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. It was in theaters for 3 weeks. It was premiered at Cannes. It will be on Amazon Prime by the time anyone hears this, and it'll be forgotten about by the time anyone hears this as well. So,
which is, in some cases, it's not sad, and it's like, well, who cares? The movie was just mediocre. But in some cases, like some of these movies could be really good and really deserve an audience, and it's much harder now for some of these underrated movies, indie movies, foreign movies, whatever, to gain.
I guarantee you a lot of people are going to be putting on like their year-end list, even though it's a series, but some will call it a film or what have you. The Underground Railroad from Barry Jenkins.
Right.
Which, again, Amazon gave the money for him to make it, which is great. But good luck keeping a conversation going for more than 3 days. So you can find it right now if you're looking for it, and it's excellent. But it should be more of a cultural conversation if it was in a different environment, a different distributor, different something. But then again, they may not have gotten the funds to make it in the first place. So I'm happy that they did. So
right.
It's kind of hard to get too angry about it, but
And in the case of year-end top 10 lists, what you were saying, I think, in a weird way, I think critics have an obligation now to, when they list these top 10 lists, to tell people where to find some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but it's like, if you really care about people watching these movies, then you need to tell them how to find it, because a lot of people are not Eric and I, So we will, who will
Most
go and
people are
look
not.
all over the place.
You or I. In fact, there are about 9 billion that aren't. What are they going to do? They need it.
That's true. That's true. Well, let us know what you think about all this. What you think about all the streaming, digital movie theater to digital windows, all that stuff. Let us know what you think. Check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Give us a like. Give us a 5-star review. Send us money if you want. Whatever. All that stuff.
You can get on Cameo. We can do happy birthdays to your family.
And my cameos would definitely be cheap. So I think that would be a good thing. Who's this guy? I don't know. It's $2. $2 cameo.
We got to bring back. Do they still have TV Guide? Like an actual physical copy? Because I think we need that back now for streaming.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Bring it back. Get your.
Now we're dating ourselves. So for Erik, my name is Chad. We will see you next week.